Yo, what's going on? Hey, I appreciate y'all tuning in this Friday. We got a dope free game Friday. I haven't said that in a while, but it's going to be interesting. We definitely got a special guest on who is really big into promoting and educating people on financial literacy, but more important, him and his family is on a financial freedom journey. So we definitely going to dive in and talk about that. Hey, I'm Marcus. This is the channel, The Debt Free Dad, where we're talking financial takes, financial topics, attorney reactions on current events. And I'm letting y'all know the other thing that's important is me and my family are on our financial freedom journey. So if you're into finance content, finance literacy, attorney reactions, definitely make sure you subscribe and like this video. As always, I'm giving out the disclaimer. I am a licensed attorney, licensed in a few places, but none of those places amount to me being your attorney. So if you're looking for legal or financial advice, the advisement that I'm going to give you is to seek a professional in your local area to square you away. Definitely don't leave it to the talking heads. Now, it's interesting because I just told somebody that I started going I normally go to the gym 3 to 4 times a week, right? But I know that me and my family have a vacation plan this summer. So I started going to the gym like 5 times a week. Why am I going to the gym 5 times a week? It's not really a health thing, even though that's a plus. But the biggest thing is, when I step out, I don't want to look like an embarrassment to my wife. But that same logic is the same way you strengthen those muscles so that your physical health could be good, that you don't look like an embarrassment to your family. When I thought about it, I was like, man, you got to flex that same financial muscle so you don't be an embarrassment to your family and so you can get where you want to be in the future. So, hey, I'm going to go ahead tag my guest in. He is an educator. His name is Rashad Muhammad. Like I said, he puts out a lot of good content on financial literacy. Him and his family are on their financial freedom journey. Hey, this brother did an interview on this channel with Pocket Watcher with JT. If you aren't familiar, go check it out. This brother and his wife were invited to the table with Anthony O'Neill. Hey, so hey, that's definitely a big deal. Go check out that video as well. Let's dive in. Let's introduce them to the family. What's going on, bro? How you doing today?
Good evening, my brother. How are you, man?
Hey, man, I'm blessed, man. Hanging in there, man. I appreciate you tagging in, man, because I was rolling a little late, man. You probably can't tell, but I'm sounding a little nasally, man. My allergies just been stomping a mud hole in me for some reason, man. So between dealing with the allergies, trying to get some medicated nasal stuff and getting the kids, my time got a little jacked up. So I appreciate your flexibility, champ.
Hey, I'm just happy to be here, man. I'm happy to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a minute. And I think everybody is having allergy issues right now. So
Yeah, I used
you're
to be
definitely
cool,
not
man.
alone.
I know I used to
Yeah.
be cool, man, but like it was like once I got old, man, I was like I know when it's gonna rain. My knee be acting up. I'm like, oh, it's about to rain. It's getting crazy, man. But yeah, I used to not have none of those ailments, man. Now I'm just kind of falling off. But that's a whole nother story. Now, before we dive in, go ahead and introduce yourself to the community, to the intellectual family. Tell them a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, and where people can find you before we dive in.
Yeah, man. Like you said, Rashad Muhammad. I'm actually a father of three, a husband to Nirvana. My wife's an educator. She's been a teacher for about 15 years. I've been in education for about almost 20 years now. And I decided to start a YouTube channel just, to talk about finances. And originally it was to let educators know that it's a possibility, that you can become financially independent. You don't have to make a ton of money to become a millionaire. You really just need to consistently invest. And I got a lot of positive feedback. I had some really good guests on my channel. And, I reached over 1,600 subscribers. I'm trying to get to 10,000. I'm taking my time. It's still somewhat of a hobby, even though I'm monetized.
Right, right.
But yeah, I really enjoy the feedback that I get from individuals who really didn't know that they were able to become financially independent, and just them hearing some of the stories of the individuals that I have interviewed and hear my story as well. They see that as possible. So, like I said, I'm an educator. My wife's an educator. We have 3 kids. I have a YouTube channel called Journey to a Million, and it will be Journey to a Million One if you want to go ahead and like and subscribe and just share some of that content.
Nice, nice. Hey, dope introduction, man. I couldn't. I feel like I did you a disservice, man. I didn't, but hey, I love to see. people on their journeys. Like no matter what it is, like is is one thing for me. I respect the people who tell me how they did it, but I really respect and I enjoy and the content I like is the people who telling me what they're doing so I can see where they started from and where they got to. You know what I mean? It's just a little bit more easy for me to take in. And a prime example is during the pandemic, I was just like kind of looking for stuff to watch, and I found this guy. He was like 10,000 years old, but he was just working from home. So he said, I want to learn how to skateboard. And so I was glued in because it wasn't like he'd been skateboarding all his life. This dude just started it. And I like to see those journeys and that progression. And low key, I was like, man, is he gonna fall? Every day every day I was looking to see if he fall, but he never took an L. But I like kind of seeing that progression. So I always like to start out asking, tell us a little bit about your background with finances. You know, everybody, some people come from the school of hard knocks with finances. Some people they always had that saving and investing and they knew about the game early. So what was your background with finances growing up?
Yeah, great question, man. So I definitely came from the school of hard knocks. I was one of the fortunate individuals who had a phenomenal father and phenomenal mother. My dad didn't graduate from middle school. And so he kind of found himself working, hustling his entire life. He was a truck driver, then he became a painter. Unfortunately, not having that degree and not having that background, he had to definitely, skip and try to hustle to get to the next paycheck, to get to the next month rent. So we lived in and out of the pawn shop. So with a pawn shop, you normally give something to them and then you got to pay them to get it back at a very high interest rate. But we knew once something went to the pawn shop, we weren't getting it back. Because if you don't have the money to, if you had to put it in the pawn shop in the first place, for the most part, it's going to be even more difficult to get it back. So
Right.
those are the early lessons I learned about money. Basically, it was struggle. And that's putting it lightly, man. We had the things we needed growing up, but we didn't necessarily have the things we wanted. We had a lot of love, but we didn't have any loot. So
Right.
as a kid, you don't understand it, man. I remember when those Dennis Rodman shoes came out, man, starter jackets. I never got them, but I got them every time when it was about 2 or 3 years out of style.
After the fact, right.
Yeah, after the fact. So I'll be happy. I'll be like, I got these Rodmans on. But it was 2 years ago when they were cool and everybody laughing at you,
Right. Yeah, trust me, I understand. I've been down there. I can remember the first name brand pair of shoes I got. It was like some old red Air Force Ones that had like a white swoosh sign on it. And I was so pressed. It was torrential rain outside. I wore them in the rain. Man, I came home, my socks was cherry red, man. I was so pressed to wear those shoes. So I definitely understand that. But let me ask you something. So, what facilitated your journey to, like at what point did it hit you? It was like, damn, you know what? We can do this finance thing different. I can do this finance thing. When did that point come in your life where you started to get that candle lit related to financial education?
So in all honesty, man, and to be transparent, it was a 2011 bankruptcy.
Mm.
And yeah, I led my family down the wrong path. I always take responsibility, man. My wife was following my lead and I led us to a path of darkness. And we had to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy in 2011. And the ironic thing is that, you file bankruptcy, they wipe out your unsecured debts. But the thing is, after that, you have to kind of rebuild things. You have to be able, if you let your car go into bankruptcy, now you got to go out and get a car.
Right.
And people are more than willing to lend you money at high rates for a car because they know you can't plead bankruptcy again for 10 more years.
Right.
Yeah. So I had to go right back out and start, running up debt again. And I saw that we were possibly headed down the same road. So I said, man, we can't do this, babe. We have to do something about this. And that's when we kind of put our foots down and we decided to get on the same page. And we haven't looked back since, man. I mean, we're doing very well right now, but it took some time. I think the bankruptcy was the final straw. And then seeing that, we weren't necessarily free after the bankruptcy. We were still somewhat slaves to debt,
Right. So, that's and I definitely understand that, and it makes sense as you explain it out. Let me ask, talk a little bit about, because we hear these stories of people who declare bankruptcy and chapter 7 and chapter 11. At the time you were going through the bankruptcy, did you have children yet? You and your wife have children?
Yeah, we had matter of fact, we had our daughter in March of 2011, and then we ended up having our bankruptcy discharge in July 2011. And I tell the story that, you know, the day we went to the bankruptcy court and we had to give our numbers in the court in front of all the other people who are filing bankruptcy as well. And my wife was holding my daughter, and my oldest child was at school, and we said our number. And I remember a couple of people chuckling, or one person in particular chuckled at our number. And I'm like, man, this is somebody else who broke just like us.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, but they're laughing at our numbers. And that, I'm not gonna say it hurt, but it was definitely a catalyst on, hey man, we gotta, once this is done, we have to pick things up and we have to go down the right path. But that was basically it, man. The bankruptcy itself, obviously, is a kind of an earth-shattering event.
Right, right.
But when you don't necessarily care about credit anymore, you start caring about your net worth, it doesn't bother you as much,
Right, right. Okay. And so let me ask, are you as y'all made that turn from doing that, y'all had this, light bulb moment where y'all was gonna do things different. Were you all kind of, what, we're gonna be hardcore, the Ramsey model, or did you kind of do something that fit what worked for you all? What was your approach when y'all started to hit the ground with it?
Okay, good question. In 2011, of course, we did the bankruptcy. It was discharged. Then we actually had our home that we did not reaffirm in our bankruptcy. So they pretty much took that from us in 2012. So in between that time, in between like 2011, 2014-ish, we were still somewhat lost. We were still, getting into debt. Not like before. We made decent money at the time, but in 2014 was when it really like popped off, when we took Financial Peace University, and my wife was on board. We took it with another couple, and I'll never forget, man, the day my wife came to me after the first session and said, let's sell my van. Let's sell the van. And we sold the van. We actually closed on selling her van on her birthday in 2014. And so we started the Financial Peace in September, and then by October we had shaved off about $12,000 by selling her van. So that was the catalyst, man. And after that, we didn't look back.
Right. Dope, dope. And it's dope because I just saw you posted a video today where you owe under 6 figures on your mortgage, So to hear that beginning story and how things started, for you to be posting today, hey, we owe less than $100,000 on that home, like that's a blessing, and it's truly indicative of the work that your family put in to get to that point, bro.
I appreciate that. So yeah, we started out, our house was about 215, and that was in 2015 when we closed on our house. And that's like right before the market blew up. So now our house is worth about 375, 400, but then we owe like 99,000 on it. And just being able to do that was incredible. It's still surreal when because I can remember when we went from 215,000 to under 200,000.
Right.
Yeah. So then it's like, we got a 15-year mortgage at a low interest rate. So every month, almost all of it is going to principal. But just to see it go under $100,000 was just phenomenal, man. It's an eye opener, a game changer.
Man, I definitely want to be there. When you make that final payment, do it over the phone and record it so you could turn it into content. So because I know when I
already.
Go ahead.
Hey, do you follow His and Her Money?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you saw it, but they did a video where they went and paid off the mortgage, and I'm definitely planning that. Like I'm gonna get permission from the bank ahead of time. I'm gonna make it a production and let people know, like, because just think about it. Almost nobody pays off their mortgage.
Right.
We get 30-year mortgages and we pay on it for 5 years. Then we go do a cash out refi, or we go upgrade every single time. And we thought about upgrading. we almost upgraded a few times, brother.
Right.
You know, I'm a part-time realtor, so if my wife in right now, ask her how many showings that we had over the last 4 or 5 years, she'll probably tell you it's been about 50. We've been tempted, but then we're like, nah, man, we need to pay this mortgage off.
Right.
And then we got one kid that's leaving about 2 years ago to go and do his thing. So then our house is gonna magically get bigger once we go down from 3 to 2 kids. You know,
you can get that pool table, make that movie room or whatever. That's definitely what's up. So let's go ahead and take a pivot. Now that we got a little bit about your story and your family's journey to financial freedom, let's take a pivot and talk a little bit about financial topics. And you know, one thing you said when you were going into your background, you talked about you know, not being focused on what people thought, but being focused on your net worth. Okay. And so I always have a, you know, like I track my net worth, and I maybe do it once a year because I just don't feel the need to look at it every 3 months, because I know if I continue to do the same thing, I already know what's going to happen. No matter what the market doing, if I waited out to 2024, middle of 2024, I know my account going to pop because I'm doing the same thing. But let's talk a little bit about net worth. How important is net worth? And you had another video I looked at where you were talking about liquidity and having cash on hand. And so for me, there's always that balance. But yet net worth is an indicator of wealth. But in some instances, in my opinion, I think it could be a trash indicator, because you can have a high net worth, but if you aren't really liquid with that cash you can get your hands on, it could cause a problem. So give me your take on that.
Hey, great point. Net worth is very important. At the same time, it is not necessarily, it's not the only indicator of wealth. So kind of what you're saying, like we have a high net worth. We're not at 1 million yet. But if you were to ask me, can I go pull $20,000 to purchase an investment property, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Right.
I wouldn't. Now, there was a time when I had, I think, about $25,000 in the bank, but we ended up paying cash for my wife's vehicle. It ended up being almost at $24,000, you know. But yeah, we don't have, you know, a lot of cash that's laying around now. We can go raid our Roth IRAs, but we're not going to do that.
Right.
Yeah. When we put money in retirement, we look at it as for retirement. We don't look at it like an emergency fund or a down payment on a house or anything like that. So net worth is important. When I add up all my assets and then subtract the liabilities, we have a decent net worth. A lot of that's tied up in the house. So that means it is illiquid. I can't just go and get that money out or anything like that. So
right. And it's interesting because, it's funny, you and your wife are educators, and I always tell everybody, teachers are in the top 5 professions of first generation millionaires. And a lot of people think, well, why is that? Universally, teachers as a collective discipline don't really make a lot of money. I said, but you got to think about it. These people are educators, and a lot of them are used to getting paid certain times of the year, not getting paid certain times of the year, having to get a second job. So I think teachers and educators really have a mindset, because of the way their job is set up, where they have to learn how to budget, where they have to learn how to discipline, where they have to learn how to stretch resources from the classroom. You know what I mean? And I think that really carries over into the finances. So with that being said, what are your thoughts on, when you talk about being liquid, what are your thoughts on we know that people need an emergency fund, but what are your thoughts on, one, how much should an emergency fund or your emergency fund be? And two, do you want to just kind of have cash on the sidelines just in case, even if it's extra for the emergency fund? Because a lot of people take the approach, once I got the emergency fund, I'm investing everything else. But, different opinions roll on that. Me, I like to have an emergency fund, and I got an allocated amount. We put $500 a month in that account. No matter if we're at the max or not, it's just going to keep going in there, because we know inevitably something's going to come up. You know what I mean? So that's kind of our approach. What are your take on that?
Hey, man, great questions, great point. So I actually am looking at it like you should have two separate accounts. So, and that's what we're working on now. One is going to be that emergency fund, and then another one's just going to be like a slush fund. And we're going to also be doing these sinking funds as well. That's what we have. We have sinking funds set up with Fidelity. So, for instance, we know we don't escrow our taxes, our property taxes. So we do that on our own. And yeah, it's painful. Like I'm about to write a $6,300 check. Excuse me, I'm about to put $6,300 on my credit card to pay off my property taxes for this year. I found a way you can do it without incurring any fees or anything like that. So I get a bunch of points for doing that. But a lot of people don't have the discipline to just sit there and escrow their own taxes. They rather send it to the mortgage company.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. So we have those sinking funds set up where we put a certain amount of money each month in those funds. Then we have the emergency fund, which right now we're probably putting about $1,000 a month in there. And then we have these other funds to where, like, my wife and I like to travel, whether it's cruise or just going to visit family out of town. We have those funds as well. So, I think when you're talking about an emergency fund, there's no, there's no set rule. But I think what my rule is that you need to have a certain amount of money in there that allows you to feel comfortable, feel like you're protected. So if the wife feels that it needs to be 10,000 and you feel it needs to be 7,500, I would say go with the 10,000 and maybe even add a couple thousand to that as well.
Right.
Yeah. It just needs to, there's no set amount. If you make, the 3 to 6 months is pretty standard, but what makes somebody choose 3? What makes somebody choose 6? So that's when I say, okay, y'all sit down and talk about it. What do you feel you need to be comfortable with? I know some people say put as much money as you want in the market, but I personally don't think you can ever have too much cash on hand, too much in those kind of, cash reserve funds.
Right.
So that's my take on it. And also you really need to think about the job security. Like my wife and I, man, it's a shortage in education right now. And unless we do something absolutely crazy to get fired, we're good. We know that once a month we're gonna get our checks rolling in and we'll be good to go. So, the 6 months to us is probably excessive, but to some 6 months or even 12 months might be, where it's at.
Yeah. And that's that. Like we just shooting for 12 months. We was like, you know what? Since we got it on autopilot and we just not worried about it. As long as no emergency come up, we just not gonna worry about it. Just let it go there until it gets to 12 months, and then we'll figure out. So this year we've actually been, I did a poll on the channel and I asked people, how's your financial situation been since pre-pandemic? Has it improved? Is it about the same? Has it gotten worse? And it was dope because 76% of people said their financial situation has gotten better. And I was like, okay, so the next question I had in my mind, like, I wonder what people are doing different from then versus what they're doing now. And one of the things for us was, let's go ahead and build this emergency fund. And we got it at 6 months now, and we've never had 6 months of an emergency fund there before. And the only reason we decided to go this route and increase it was because we sold an asset to pay off some debt. And we knew we needed to have a certain amount of taxes there. So we left it there. But even though we knew that was going to taxes, every time I looked at that account and saw that money there, I was like, man, it looked good to have that there just in case something happened. And so that, even though once we had to take it out and pay the IRS, I was like, you know what? I think that's our number. If we could get to that number right there, I think that's our content number. So I think that was a good point. Now, you're a family man, and I like something you said where you were, hey, I appreciate the candor when you were talking about your bankruptcy. And I think me and you think a lot the same on this process, because you said something that resonated with me, because you said something like, yeah, I kind of, you took ownership. I kind of led my family down the wrong financial path. And one, I think being accountable and taking ownership of that is a good thing. But I think you and I think the same way. I tell people all the time now that I'm older, I be like, you know what? This is just my view. It's a male responsibility to be the spiritual head of the household and to be the leader of the household. And that don't mean if you're a jerk to be crazy, but if you're doing everything the way you're supposed to, and take your wife's guide. My wife is my co-captain. She can exercise veto power. I can exercise veto power. That's just kind of how it goes. But I tell everybody, especially when younger guys come to me talking about stuff for their relationships, I be like, most times if you change your behavior as the guy, the climate in the entire household would change. And I saw that. I can speak from experience where I was like, man, people wilding out in this household. But no, it wasn't them. It was me. When I changed how I perceived things and how I did things, the entire climate kind of changed. So when you're talking about family dynamics, how do you and your wife go about? I mean, and I know your kids have seen your journey, but how do you go about passing that knowledge to them, and making sure that they can understand? Because you got a child who in 2 years is going to be gone. That's a big thing, man. So how have y'all gone about kind of passing those lessons to them?
Man, a lot to unpack there, man. So first of all, we have continued to have these conversations with our kids throughout our journey. And we're pretty transparent. Like, they don't know how much money we have or anything. They do know that we don't struggle. But
Right.
at the same time, like, no matter how much money we make or how much we have, they know they can't just get anything they want. They understand, like, we try to teach them all the time. You're sitting in class with 20 or 30 other kids. There's a chance that half of those kids, or more than half of those kids, don't have what you have. And we try to teach empathy.
Mm-hmm.
And we let them know, like, hey, you're sitting in class with kids that might not necessarily have dinner tonight. So we try to teach lessons of empathy. We try to let them be, have gratitude. We want them to have gratitude, and we try to teach them to be able to put things off for the future. So for instance, my son got his first job when he was 15, and he has been, I'm not gonna say forced, but we have him put half of all of his earnings into a Roth IRA. And right now, of course, a 15 or 16-year-old won't understand compound interest.
Mm-hmm.
We just tell them, like, hey, every dollar you put to the side now in 45 years, that'll be $88. And you calculate those numbers. Would you rather have $88 in 45 years or $1 now? Now,
right.
Most of them, they're gonna say 88, but they just think they don't understand the concept of time.
Right. So 45, that's a long time away.
that's a very long time away. Very long time. Right. But yeah, and we also have taught them about the hedonic treadmill and things like that, and they understand, like, well, we got 2 out of 3. I think 2 out of 3 understand that things don't make you happy. Right. So if instead of paying $50 for this item now, that a week from now you're going to either throw away or it's going to be broken, you put that $50 away, you're going to reap the benefits in 10, 15, 20 years. And I just wish somebody taught me this when I was younger.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good point, because it's the statistic is 70% of wealth is lost on the next generation. So you definitely have to put those educational foundational points there so they can understand how to build wealth. And because, like, I tell my kids all the time, I don't have to leave y'all nothing. Nope. I mean? It's funny because I again, since we're on this point, you did a video. It was a short, I think, and you were talking about a Dave Ramsey call where a lady wrote her children out of her will. I don't know if you remember that. You remember that video you did?
Oh man, yeah. So I can give a brief overview if you want me to.
Yeah. Because let's talk about that, because I was like, damn. When I heard that, I was like, damn, what would my kids have to do for me to write them out the will? Go ahead, give us an overview before we talk about it real quick, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, man, that was definitely one of the most interesting calls I heard, and I understand both points, both sides of the coin. So what happened was that it was during the lockdowns, and the daughter, I don't know if she was, her immune system was compromised or not, but she was somebody who she wore masks, she social distance and all of that. So she told her mom, who lived out of state, hey, if you're going to visit me and the kids, then I don't, we're gonna have to socially distance. You might have to be across the room from me. We're not gonna be doing hugs and all that. Well, the mom was like, well, I'm not gonna come visit you if I'm not gonna be able to hug you and be in your face. And then the daughter, she didn't understand where the mom was coming from. So she said, forget it. So they didn't go visit, nobody compromised. And then eventually the daughter stopped answering phone calls. She started sending the mail back, return to sender. And now they can't find her unless they go and fly and go see her. So mom's like, hey, if I'm dead to her, she's dead to me. So I'm gonna write her out the will. It was a ridiculous situation to me where I could see the fault in both parties. I could see them both having ownership over it and being the reason that they kind of broke up the family. But at the same time, for somebody to do what they did, it led me to believe that something was going on previously.
Right.
Straw.
Right. Yeah. I agree, because when I watched that video, I was like, it had to be something underlying for both sides to be so quick to cut the other one off. You know what I mean? I think that's point number one. But it's led me to believe, because I got a partner of mine, a homeboy of mine. I actually call him my spiritual mentor. He a few years older than he maybe 10 and 11 years older than me. But he told me, he was like, I wrote my kids out of the will. And I was like, what? I was like, why would you? Like, I'm just me. Like, it's maybe one or two reasons why I would actually like, okay, kids, I'm not giving you nothing. And most of those reasons, it would have to be extreme. Is this if it's substance abuse issues, if it's something criminal related that you're going to get caught up in a criminal. I'm not funding those type of things. Even if, hey, let's just be honest. Even if my kids, let's knock on wood because I don't want to be, but even if they're a little foolish and immature, I might not leave them everything, but I'm still going to leave them something. And so, I asked, I was like, well, what caused this for you to write your kid out of a will? And it was over a disagreement. Well, one, I think it was a daughter. So I think daughters and dads got a unique relationship. But it was a disagreement related to a daughter and the relationship she was having with somebody. And I was like, I could kind of wrap my mind around it, because if something happened, I don't want to leave you this and you and this knucklehead. If you know what I mean? So I could kind of wrap my mind around it, but that's actually a common thing that people have these issues. And it has to be something extreme for me to go that. That's just kind of how I am. And I'm under the assumption that my kids won't grow up to be foolish or jerks.
Let's hope. And sometimes, you have multiple kids and they all came from the same womb. They came from the same mom and dad, but then one of them is like off the chain and then one is like really respectful. So, we tell our kids, like, ain't no guarantee, man. One of y'all might get a little bit, one might not get anything. I mean, I just saw it. I just saw a post the other day in one of the groups on Facebook where one of the children is upset because her brother is getting $100,000 interest-free loan from the parents to, like, as a down payment. Now, obviously, that's illegal. It's illegal because when you sign a gift letter, it's not seasoned money. So if you're signing you are saying this is a gift, we don't expect to be repaid. But they're working out a deal where this son, her brother, is getting $100,000 to get a head start with the mortgage. And then he's going to be paid back at 0% interest. Well, the daughter's upset because she said, "Wait, they didn't do anything like that for me."
Right.
But I'm like, they don't owe you anything,
Right.
They don't owe you anything.
Right.
Yeah. Parents know their kids, so they're gonna do what they want to do with their money.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily like, and I think sometimes people take it a certain way, like, oh, if a lot of times a child may take that a certain way is, oh man, why are you giving him more? But it's not an attack that is, and sometimes it's a compliment. Because I've had this situation where when I was younger, I asked, like, man, he gets a lot of help. Why don't I get help? And my parents looked at me and was like, because you don't need the help. Because we got a lot more faith in you and your ability to do stuff, so we don't have to give you these steps. And when they explained it to me, I was like, you know what? That it was easy. It made sense. I was young. I was in my life. I was maybe like 19 at the time. And I was like, okay, it makes sense. And I mean, hell, I haven't lived at home since I was 17, so they must have knew something was right.
Yeah, they knew something was right. And, I got 3 kids. I think you have 2.
Right, right, yep.
So yeah, I know out of my 3 kids right now, just based on personalities, now I know who would be more reliable with the money.
Right.
If we left them. Yeah. So we want to put our kids in a position to be successful. Do you want to leave a bunch of money to a kid who you think is going to go out and, blow all that money in a year?
Right.
I wouldn't.
Right. Yeah,
So,
that's true. Gotta have that estate plan in place, bro. Let me
absolutely.
ask a question, and I think this is a unique question. Let's kind of turn it to finances and the culture. Okay, let's kind of turn it back because where did you grow up at? Like what neighborhood, what state really did you grow up at?
I was born in Connecticut, lived in New Jersey for a little bit, but I kind of earned my stripes in Atlanta. That's where I went to middle school and graduated from high school in Metro Atlanta.
Okay, okay. So let's talk a little bit about just finances in the African American community. And we already know there's a wealth gap that's prevalent. There's a home ownership gap. So you have all of these things. Let's take because how could I say this? You have a lot of people, and yes, I'm before we even go in. Yes, there are things that are implemented that are designed to hold certain people back. That's not a myth. That's a fact. In spite of those things, it's still a responsibility on the person to try to make maneuvers around it. That's just kind of what the name of the game is. So when we're talking about wealth in the black community, what are some of the reasons that you think things that we can control where we kind of feed into the concept of not being that delayed gratification, that impressing others. What are some of the things that you think feed into that into the black community and why it's so difficult? Because I know cats right now, I'm 41. I know cats right now at 40, 41 years old, my age and older, who still do stuff to be able to put it on social media so it can appear like a flex so other people can see what they're doing. There's always that need to impress. So talk a little bit about one, why do you think that's so prevalent and how do we kind of turn the corner to get out of that mindset?
Man, great questions. Great questions. So I think in our community, a lot of time we desire status symbols, and that could be for many reasons. If you come from nothing, if you don't have anything growing up, the latest shoes mean a lot to you, or the latest iPhone means a lot to you. And being able to show others that you can afford these things, even if your bank account or your parents' bank account says zero, but you have this particular item, you look like you have money when in actuality, the people who have the money, you can't necessarily tell. So if you see Jay-Z walking down the street, or you see, somebody from around the block walking down the street, you might think this other individual is loaded with money. You might think Jay-Z looks broke when in
Right,
actuality,
right, right.
yeah. So until, like, in our community, until we get to the point of not desiring things, like, until we realize that things really don't matter at the end of the day, we're going to continue this cycle of poverty.
Right.
And trust me, I know about the systemic issues, and because it's all intertwined, right? You're talking about the home ownership gap, the wealth gap, and in education we have the achievement gap, we have the
Yeah.
attitude gap. I mean, think about it. We don't talk about the attitude gap a lot, but the attitude gap is basically when people don't necessarily feel they can achieve something. They don't feel that they're able to do something. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And then you have the achievement gap as well. So this stuff is all intertwined, and it's obviously been going on for many, many years now. The only way to reverse course and to try to turn things around is to have these difficult conversations.
Right.
That's
Right.
it. Like, we can't expect things to get better if you and I and people like us aren't having these conversations and trying to discuss things that we can do as a collective community to improve our community as a whole.
Right, right. I think that's a good point. It's funny because I feel like everybody goes through this stage where they want to. they want to be liked. They want to please other people. You know what I mean? And I think the sooner you kind of get to the point where you realize, you know what, no matter what I do to please somebody else, when stuff hit the fan, is on you. And maybe if you lucky, you might be blessed to have a handful of family members who really give a you know what about you. But for the most part, I mean, and this is my view. It may be a cynical view based on my experience, but for the most part, if you have two good friends, you probably got one more than most people will ever have in their life. It's very hard to find a real group of people who genuinely care about you. I don't think most people, I mean, in the moment, for the parties, for the events, but really nobody's going to care more about you and your situation than you. If no matter what you got when you flexing club and doing all this other stuff, it's crazy because none of that really matters. If something goes up, a lot of those people you won't even be able to go to ask for assistance. They may not be able to give you any just guidance, even if you're not asking them for nothing. And one of the things that stuck out with me, and I don't know if you remember this video. I talked about this video before, but it was I don't know if you remember Nelly Step on My J's video. You remember that video?
Yeah, yeah.
It was Nelly featuring Sierra, right?
Yeah.
And I thought about this because, hey, shout out to all my folks around the way. But when you grow up, you got your little neighborhood clips and everything. And when I got older, I thought about it. I said, man, we were like it. When I thought about it, I said, man, at least all the trouble and the knucklehead stuff we did to protect that neighborhood. At least when I look back on it in hindsight, all my friends, their parents owned those houses. So right now, those houses are still in their family. But it's cats and people in that community who do stuff for blocks that they don't even own. And so when I watched that video, one thing that resonated with me is the scene where the white guy steps on Nelly's shoe. And Nelly says, man, what you doing in this neighborhood? Who told you can come over here? You just stepped on my $500 shoe. And all those are knockoffs. And what you mean your neighborhood? This is my neighborhood. I own this place, this place, this place, and this place. And Nelly and his boys just kind of look at the dude and they was like, oh, but that's a true bill. A lot of people are sacrificing blood over something that's not even theirs. You know what I mean? People are fighting over a block that they pay rent for. And that's just a mentality that we got to get out of. Some of it is facilitated by media. Some of it is facilitated by music. Some of it is facilitated just through, I guess, financial trauma and socioeconomic trauma that you see in the neighborhood, man. But it's really tough, man. So I really salute you and other people who I see trying to provide information to people who are looking for it to kind of change that, man. Because it's sad, and the more I talk about it, I actually get frustrated because it's just so prevalent, man. And no matter what you do as a parent, your influence is the first influence, but all the time it may not be the strongest influence. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, man, some good points. When you get to the point where you don't care about stunting, you don't care about what others think. What's up, Don? What's going on, man? My man Don Johnson, he's been a follower for a minute.
Definitely.
That brother doing big things in the finance game. But yeah, man, just when you get to the point where you don't really care about what others think, the only thing you really care about is that net worth and you're leaving a legacy for your family. That's when you'll change your family tree.
Right. Let me ask, when was the first time as an adult? Because I was just having this conversation with my wife because I watched a video of the Money Guy show and they were talking about this. And I said, damn, that's an interesting topic. When was the first time in your life, if you've reached it, where you kind of sat back and thought, I don't feel broke. I don't feel strained for money. Like I feel like I'm okay. Have you ever reached it? Have you reached that point? Because I'll tell you, for me and my wife had this conversation, and when I watched the guy, well, me and my wife had this conversation, and I remember I'm 41. It was probably last year when I was 40 where I said, and I mean I wasn't broke, but it was probably last year when I turned 40 where I kind of sat back and took a breath and said, you know what? I'm doing all right financially despite the mistakes. Now, a couple of things facilitated that. One, in late 2019, 2020, we got super focused.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing that facilitated that was no matter what our financial mistakes were, we started investing at, I was 26. So you're talking about, I think, and when I saw the Money Guy show, for me, it took 15 years of compounding interest on what I was doing. So like now I can look back and I can see like, oh man, if I had certain accounts, I had years where I made 16%, and I'm like, damn, 16%. I could start to see where, okay, yeah, that could replace some income. That can sustain me if we get 9%, if we get 10%. So have you reached that point where you felt like, okay, I know we're on the right path, we're comfortable, we're good now, or have you not reached that point yet? I was grown at 40 years old was when I sat back and I was like, all right, we can relax, babe.
It's interesting that you bring that up because my wife tells me all the time, she's like, you need to get counseling for financial trauma, because to this day, as well as we're doing, I still don't feel like we've arrived. And
right.
I don't know if I don't know if I'll necessarily get to that point until I retire and my pension starts kicking in. I don't know. I can't tell you. I know we're doing okay, and I know we're doing better than most people. So that doesn't, that doesn't miss me. Like I know that. However, I feel if you get too complacent, that's where you start kind of making mistakes. But at the same time, now we're able to throw money towards those experiences that will make us happy, and those things that when I'm on my deathbed, I can look back and say, man, we had a really good run at it. We did some things as a family, but I just don't think right now I'm at the point where I can coast. I got to keep going hard. Now we've scaled back a little bit with the investments. We're maxing out our Roth, maxing out HSA, but we're no longer maxing out our 403B. We scaled that back. We were investing about $3,300 a month in our 403Bs pre-tax, but now we scaled that back to $1,000, and then the rest of the money we're using for brokerage accounts and for experiences. So we're, I'm not as uptight as I was 5-6 months ago. So I'm getting a little looser, but I don't think I'll ever be at the point where I'm like, okay, we've arrived. Right. You know what I'm saying?
It's not necessarily, but I feel you. And it's like, you're going to be that guy where like, you could be sitting on $1 million in investment assets and cash, and you're going to be like, hey, I saw this nice used truck for $15,000. and your wife like, come on now.
Let me tell you a crazy story, man. So I was out with some of my fraternity brothers a couple of weeks ago, probably about a month ago. And we were at a restaurant, and the restaurant had a special, like a small plate special. What you get to 10 o'clock, you can get the wings for $6. Well, we sat down about 9:37. So I told the lady, I said, hey, I'll take my Diet Coke or whatever. I'm gonna order at 10 o'clock. So at about 10:02, I ordered my food, which was gonna be like, instead of $9, it's $6, right? So when I got my check, she charged me $9 full price. I was like, hey, I ordered at 10:02. It should be $6. Can you believe a couple of my line brothers are like, why are you worried about $3? I mean, and I'm like, listen, I'm not giving up a free $3. Like $3 is $3. It's a tank of gas,
Right,
like,
right.
Why am I gonna give the restaurant $3 extra when I rightfully should be paying $6?
Right.
My thing is to still, just because, and I would have the same mindset if I was a millionaire, or if I had 20 million in the bank, I would rather give that extra $3 to the waitress than to give it to the restaurant.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny because when I'm a stickler like that. I got like a pie chart for all my bills, and one month I looked and I was like, why did the percentage for my cell phone bill go up? It went up like $2. And so I couldn't see like what the fuck what is this $2 for? So I called them, and they couldn't explain to me what the $2 was for. They literally had no clue. I was like, why did it go up like the? And they was like, we'll change it back, sir. Like they were really shocked. Like, why are you calling about $2? But I was like, if you hit me up for $2 every month,
Yep.
I've been
Adds
with
up.
I've been with this same phone company since 2007. Come on, man. $2 every month for that long? Nah, fam.
But just think about it, right? They you know, whether it's a restaurant or a bank or a phone company, if you add up those dollars or $2 every time, they're not going to make a mistake and take $2 off, but they will make a mistake and get an extra $2. So just think about it. Sometimes I'm at the gas station and I'll give a certain amount of money, and then the other day somebody asked if I want my quarterback. I'm like,
right.
right. I can see a couple of pennies, but I get my change back every time, because if I'm short 7 cents, they're not going to be like, oh, you don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. I mean, you kept my 7 cents last week, and now I'm short 7 cents. But you didn't know. You weren't the same cashier who was here. So I just don't believe in giving any extra money to the establishment. I mean, that's just me.
Right.
I think that's put it in my pocket.
I think that's a fair point. Hey, shout out to everybody in the chat who joined in, and just some of the comments. I see Don said he got a re-enlistment bonus that kind of set everything up. And I knew when I was in the military, one of the big things that guys would do, because when you deploy, you don't pay no taxes. So guys would do their re-enlistment while they were deployed. So when they got that re-enlistment bonus, it was tax-free. So it allowed them to keep more of that actual money. So shout out to them. I got one bonus, and it was $20,000 when I signed up. But when I was in basic and saw my check, and then they explained to me how they prorated it and broke it down and all this stuff, I was hot. Private Debt-Free Dad was hot about that. Drill Sergeant was like, let me explain how they screw you, Private. I was like, what, Drill Sergeant?
Hey, hey, man, I'd like to thank you and Don for your service, man. Appreciate you guys.
Oh, appreciate it. Likewise. And then I checked out another comment from my homegirl, Aaron, which he talked about scaling back investing and, basically front loading it. That's a good approach too. I'll tell you what we've done is interesting, because, we get small cost of living raises every year. Nothing great, crazy. It may be, this year is probably the biggest one because of inflation. It's like 4-point-something%. Normally it's 2%, 2.5%, but we scale back to be able to put more on debt. But now we're at a point where, okay, anytime we get an extra percentage increase, we're just going to go ahead and put that back to build that investment side back up. So we scaled it down. We was at like 20-something%. Then we scaled it down to like 10. But over the past 2 years, anytime we get that cost of living increase, we just go ahead and put that in there. And if we keep doing that, next year we'll probably be right back at 20%, because we just been putting that extra income over there. So that's kind of been one of our approaches that we've been using when it comes to the investing, cutting back, and how we allocate that extra cost of living increase, put it back in the investment.
Look at Erin. Look at her comment.
Right.
I know she was hot. Oh, I know she was hot.
Yeah. When I went to FinCon, I rented a car because I didn't want to stay on the facility. The first day I drove on the facility, and parking was $20. I was like, nope. I caught an Uber because it was literally a 5-mile drive away. The Uber was like $7. I literally caught an Uber to there and from there to avoid paying the $20. It only saved me like $6, man. But hey, you gotta be cheap when you can. Yeah, you gotta be cheap and get it when you can get it. Now, go ahead.
No, I had just wanted to address her last comment. So there was a point where we were, I calculated the numbers, man. I think at our highest number, we were at about 45% investing / saving. I'm talking about when you talk about pension, your 403B, Roth IRA, and the HSA. And I just thought, like, man, we got this hefty pension that we're going to be getting in 10, 11 years. You ever look at the book Die with Zero? That's kind of, that kind of sparked me to say, you know what, we need to start living a little more for today, because, we have an extra $3 million in retirement on top of our pension plan. It's almost impossible to spend that. So spend a little now, scale back on the investments now, and just, do things as we go. Live day to day as well as preparing for the future.
Right. I'm telling you, in my retirement, I see different people, their financial freedom journey where they move to Iowa and live a small life, or they live in a mobile home. DFD ain't doing that. Nah, bro. In my retirement, nah. I want to be comfortable. I want to do a lot of overseas traveling. I want to have a place overseas. So I have this whole entire thing planned out, because is a certain lifestyle that I know I want, and I know more importantly, my wife want. I don't really care about all the traveling and stuff, but that's her thing. So that was one of the real conversations, that we had to have. Like, what are your expectations for retirement, so we can actually come up with a real plan? Because if I'm expecting to go live in my family home in country South Carolina, but she want to stay somewhere nice and have a vacation home in Vicenza, Italy, like we night and day. We gotta find some common accord, so to at least have that happy medium. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. And those are discussions my wife and I are having. I watch the videos of my guy Amon and Christina from Irish Journey, and they are over in Portugal. And I've looked into that, but I've also heard that I made a post one day. I was like, what is the nicest, safest, quote unquote, third world country? And a lot of people came back and said Costa Rica.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
said, you know what? That might be an opportunity. My wife, she's interested in San Diego, and then we were looking at Charleston, Savannah, Tampa as well, which we could afford once we get to that point. But at the same time, we don't want to spend too much. So Costa
yeah,
Rica was a nice little option as well.
yeah. Costa Rica is like on the top 5 places for people to retire. And I know if he's, I think, of 62, like for the first 5 years you're there, like a discount on everything. I'm talking food, gas, rent, whatever it is, because they really want to encourage a lot of people to retire there. So Costa Rica, Mexico. I tell some people like, yeah, we're looking at places in Mexico. People like, oh man, what about the cartels? I'd be like, I ain't selling dope. What's wrong with you? Like, they not gonna be worried. Old, they're not gonna be an old black guy. I'm not gonna be riding around for Bentley. Like, come on.
Hey, I'm glad you brought that up. It's funny, people, when you talk about Mexico or other countries, people always say, "Oh, is it safe there? Are you gonna be okay?" I'm like, think about America, man. You could be in a school, or you could be in a grocery store. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? So I think that a lot of us we're too arrogant to think that we're the safest out there. We're the only ones who are able to live good lives, when actually there are countries that are way safer than we are.
Yeah, man. A lot of people, every time I say something, I'll be like, oh man, I don't know. We might go back to Germany. And I mean, you hear people talk about crime and racism. I'd be like, bro, where you live at? I mean, have you been watching the news for the past lifetime? What are you talking about? But most times, and this is with anything, statistically, it's statistically rare for violent crime to happen to Joe Blow citizens. You know what I mean? Like the homicides, things like that. Vast majority of the time, they happen to people who are kind of in the game. You know what I mean? And hey, I know from personal people I know and from work that there are some people out there who are in the streets, but they actually live by code. There are these people who, if you're a civilian, they'll rob another person in the streets, but they won't rob you. I mean, so you can't be too scared to get out of your comfort zone, especially if you never traveled before. I think that's where it comes from, people who never travel. So what
Yeah.
me and my wife are gonna do, we kind of came up with this plan. Once we turn 50, we're gonna take a couple of 30-day vacations a year. I don't even care if we got to take leave without pay. But the whole point is to stay in a place that we're thinking about living when we retire for 30 days, not in no resort. Just get a place, rent it for 30 days, be out on the actual economy itself, so we can have that experience and make those determinations. Because it's hard to live somewhere, or to make a determination to live somewhere where you never had a chance to experience how it would be. So we was like, even if we had to just take leave without pay. But In 9 years, I ain't gonna care if I take leave without pay. Trust me, I'll be okay. So,
There you go, man. There you go. So let me ask you this. So, are when can you actually retire? Like what age?
well, for my wife, her retirement age, because okay, so this is kind of what we did. I never really broke this down in the video, right? But we weren't great on the finances side, but we knew early on, like, yeah, we got to start investing in these retirement accounts. So we always invested from 25, 26. We started investing in those retirement accounts. And so my first school of thought, because I have a number, but as I get older, I just keep pushing that number further and further out. But the first thing that I said I wanted to do is I want to get enough money in my retirement. So we got enough money in our retirement accounts. If we don't contribute anything else, we'll meet the minimum number that we need in retirement. And that minimum number that we needed in retirement, based on retiring at 62, was $1.3 million. All right. We hit that number at about 39. So when we were about 39, we hit that number where we had that enough money where if we never invested another penny and we just let it sit until 62, we would have been at that 1.3. But things kind of changed, things kind of evolved. So, I asked my wife, what's your number? I said, you know what the number one factor is in people being able to retire comfortably? And I said, it's not return on investment. She said, I don't care what it is. My and I was like, what? One, because I mean, I'm younger than her, so that's point number one. But for purposes of her retiring, she could walk away once she hits 55. I was like, once you hit 55, you can walk away. Because right now I'm at a point where I really enjoy the type of work I do. It's mentally challenging work, but it's not physically challenging work. So right now, where it stands, I enjoy the type of work I do. You know what I mean? I mean, my boss is probably 70 years old. You know what I mean? And he was like, he retired, came back. I don't even know what he making, probably more than me, which is he doing damn good. But
Yeah.
is when you're doing legal work, that's work you can do till you're 70 or 80 years old, even if it's part-time and make some income. So the age for her is 55. The age for me, I mean, best case scenario, if I walked away, would probably be 62. But where I'm at right now, I thrive on doing something. I like being
Yeah.
able to think. I like going in court and I used to be a big sports guy, and I'm super competitive. Me and you go bowling, you would be like, man, Jeffrey Dad, a dick. I mean, part of my language, YouTube. I'm gonna have to edit that. He's a jerk. He's a jerk, but I'm really competitive, and the work I do allows me to get that same competitive rush without having to, put the wear and tear on my knees. So that's kind of the age for her. 55. For me, it'll probably be, if I call it a day, it'll probably be 62. What about you? Y'all got a number in mind, or y'all gonna push it out to 67 or what?
Well, I'll say 53. I can actually retire 11 years from January, and I'll be almost 54. And at that time, I plan on retiring, but I plan on putting time in, volunteering here and there, but in traveling for the most part. I'll just be stepping away from my full time job, whatever that may be at the time. Maybe I'll be a superintendent of a school district,
Right.
making a really nice salary, but I eventually have to give that up and just start traveling and doing whatever I want to do. And if I don't feel like going in at 7:30, I can do part-time work, as a consultant. A lot of people do that. They work 4 days a week, 4 hours a day or something like that. So
Right.
yeah, but officially I'll retire at 53.
Yeah, I just like doing stuff, man. Like, and I don't know. I just like that. Even if I retired, it wouldn't be a retirement because if I retired at 62, like you said, consultant, I probably hang up a shingle, open my own practice, and take 2 or 3 cases a month just so I'm in the courtroom. That's kind of how I would roll. Now let me ask you before we get out of here. I like to do this every time I got somebody on, right? We got I like to call it financial overrated or underrated, right? Where I just throw out topics.
Ooh.
You either tell me if it's overrated, is it underrated, or or you just give me your quick take. Is it fairly rated? You know what I mean? So the first one that I always ask everybody about, and it's funny the responses, but I gotta ask every guest is the financial independence, retire early, overrated or underrated?
Oh man, that's a good one.
Since we talk about retiring early, is it overrated or underrated?
Can I push, or do I have to choose one of those two?
You can go properly rated, but I give you out. You can go properly rated, but you can. So,
all right. Let me say this about the fire movement, man. I think the fire movement is great. I think people realizing that they have the power, they can invest, and you teaching people to invest early and often is not a bad thing. However, I think that it somewhat became a fad, and you have people who started retiring early just to go viral and do it for the gram. Then they end up going back to work because they weren't properly prepared. Which is, I told my wife, we kind of looked at some numbers, and there's a small possibility, if we really wanted to, that we could, liquidate everything and move to Costa Rica, and we could probably live on the funds that we have for the rest of our lives. But to me, it wouldn't be wise. And I've seen so many people retiring at 35 and 36, and then they do follow-up videos about going back into the workforce, man. So I think that you just have to play it smart. So let's go overrated. Let's go overrated.
Okay.
Let's go overrated. and think
we got some overs, we got under here. So I agree. I think it's overrated because I have met very few people who are what I like to call truly retired. I think the retire early part is the issue for me. The financial independence is cool, but most people get it and they become full-time content creators. They become full-time real estate people. You just not doing 8 hours at your job. You're doing 8, 10, 16 hours somewhere else. So I think if I had to pick one, I would go overrated for that reason, even though there is some benefit. But what I find is, again, it's the RE part, the retire early part for me. I could care less about. It's just the financial independence and the peace of mind for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I changed my mindset from fire to FI like last year. Last year is when I changed. I said retire early. I mean, I don't know, what does that mean? And if you think about even some of the content creators out there who are in the fire movement, like one of my favorite couples, of course, Irish Journey that I just mentioned. They retired, but they are making content. They're if they just stop making their content, would they still be okay? So you got to think about that as well. They're making money, making a killing talking about the fire movement. But if they didn't talk about it, would they be able to stay retired?
Okay, so the next one and these are the two I asked everybody, then I'm gonna throw a couple of unique. The next one that I like to talk about is, let me look at this comment real quick. Yeah, that is true. That double taxation that you would have to get, but you can do it in a way, because I actually looked it up, because it would be, if you're splitting time between the U.S. and a foreign country, you can do it where you can travel without needing all those structural requirements to actually be domiciled there, depending on how long you're staying there. Thus, avoid the taxation. But if you're talking about staying there for a period of time that'll require you to, you talk about visas, citizenships, and that stuff. Yeah, that could be a pain in the what from a tax standpoint. Yeah, and I agree. I think the fire thing is a game changer. Like, I just look at my son and I just be like, man, I hope all this stuff stick, because this dude could be retired by 40 if you're listening. You know what I mean? So the next one I want to throw out there, since we're talking about the fire movement, that this is the second question I always ask everybody. Entrepreneurship, is it overrated or underrated? No, or we could look at it this way: having a 9 to 5, overrated or under. You can answer either or. They both attack the same issue though. And I tell you my point.
Let me say this, man. We have so many of these, what we call fake gurus, who are encouraging people to quit their 9 to 5s and go into entrepreneurship like, successful entrepreneurs grow on trees. And anybody will tell you it is extremely difficult to be an entrepreneur. It is not easy. It is hard. It takes a lot of work. I follow a guy named Anton Daniels, and he's had multiple failed businesses, and he's very, very well versed when it comes to entrepreneurship. I think entrepreneurship is overrated, but if you are able to, I guess it's relative to your success. If you are a successful entrepreneur, great. Of course, you're going to be like, I wouldn't want to do anything else. But even if you think about the successful entrepreneurs, man, they're putting in tons and tons and tons of hours, and the buck stops with them. Having a 9 to 5, having an 8 to 4, to me is I enjoy what I do. I'm an educator. My wife's an educator, and we enjoy what we do. As difficult as it is, but we know every month, at the end of the month, we getting this paycheck, and we getting it 12 times a year. Yeah, right. And we get the state contributes, the district contributes to our health insurance plan and our retirement plan as well. So I will always say that I don't have a problem with a 9 to 5. You just have to get something that fits you. Don't necessarily just be in it for the money. Make sure you get something you enjoy and something you're good at. And they say you'll never work a day in your life. That's a lie, but I love what I do, but I work every day.
Right. That's funny. I agree. I think more for an entrepreneur. I don't know. I just feel like 9 to 5s are just disrespected. Maybe because, I'm on social media, so I see all these finance people talking entrepreneurship and get an LLC and buy a G-Wagon, and you can write the entire cost of the G-Wagon. I see this so much. I feel like, man, 9 to 5s are really disrespected because statistically, most first-generation millionaires are people who have 9 to 5.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, you get that consistent money. You get the consistent check every month. Yeah. Most people who hit that first generation millionaire
status, if you got something that's making you happy, I don't know. I wouldn't. I don't. If I enjoy what I do, hey, you're gonna have sucky days at any job. Even if you're the boss. If you're the boss, you're probably gonna have more sucky days. Trust me. Elon Musk is having a crappy 60 days. Everybody who bought Tesla at $1,200, y'all can see what I'm talking about. So even if you're the boss, nothing is going to be perfect. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay, I got a few more I'm going to throw at you before we... Go ahead.
Hey, and I just want to touch on that before you get to those. So imagine you are one of these gurus who is, I agree with Don, having a 9 to 5 is underrated and entrepreneurship is overrated. I agree 1,000%. 1,000%. So imagine you have one of these gurus who is teaching people to quit their jobs and go into entrepreneurship. And then imagine you walk into Walmart as one of these gurus, and everybody at that Walmart has quit their jobs and they're now entrepreneurs. They all run MLMs. Well, now you're pissed off because there's nobody to check you out because you taught everybody to quit their jobs. Yeah. So interesting, man. Interesting.
All right. Oh yeah, she kind of like me, man. I could do it, and I've done it before in a few venues, and it was relatively successful. I could say that I would have probably defined myself as an entrepreneur, but when you're an entrepreneur, like when I go to I like to sit at the water cooler and go shoot the breeze with a few people. I don't like shooting the breeze on my dime. It's a difference. When I'm on somebody else's dime, I go, hey, how was your weekend? What you got planned? When that's on my dime, I'll be like, man, I don't want to hear what y'all doing for the weekend, man. I got stuff to do.
Hey, think about it. I got a barber, and great barber. But every time he tells me he's going on a trip, I'm like, he can't make money on the trip. You can't make money cutting hair when you go on the trip because you're not cutting hair,
Right. That's rough. That's a tough position to be in, man. Let me ask, this is a good one too, because you and your wife are both educators, so we clearly know how much you value education. Attending college for the youth, overrated, underrated?
Oh man, you getting me with this one.
So, I know you got the masters in education. I looked at the LinkedIn. I was like, hey, my guy official.
I think, man, I'm gonna try to be a little PC with this one because I know some people I know might end up seeing this. I think we need to teach trades and we need to teach kids how to continue thinking for themselves. And we need to teach kids that becoming plumbers and electricians, that's not a bad thing. Everybody is not ready to go to college. There's some people that can go right out of high school and become a firefighter or a police officer and do these public service jobs. They are needed. They're needed. Like, not, everybody doesn't have to be a college student. Think about how many students were forced to go to college by their parents. They never wanted to go to college, and they end up dropping out with student loan debt. Now they are hindered. They're in that hole to start their adult lives. Right. So I think we need to help kids find their passion, what they want to do. And we're in those conversations with our 16-year-old right now. We tell him all the time, like, hey, you got to make a decision. And I'm trying to say, hey, you need to really look strongly at the military. That might be a better path for you. You know? So
I agree. I think the military, actually, I got a homegirl I want to get like a panel of people in the military to just talk about, is the military worth it, and the financial lessons that you learn from the military. I think it's a fine structure, and it's probably one of the reasons it's funny, where it's probably one of the reasons why I'm alive and didn't end up in similar situations as some of my peers and other people I know from the street, even though the military put me right smack dab in the middle of a gunfight, but it did provide me a lot of structure and, stuff like that. So I think that's a good point. I laughed at a comment Don said. It said a lot of entrepreneurs don't even have health insurance. I was used to be in this flag football league, right? This was when I was like in my late 20s, still trying to relive my youth. And one guy was a very successful entrepreneur. I mean, he had a couple of like nightclubs in DC, and we just out there playing, like, we thinking we young, we out there playing, and he stepped wrong, and he said, "Who kicked me?" As soon as he said, "Who kicked me?" I said, "Oh, that was his Achilles," because they say it feel like somebody kicked you in the ankle. And most people to their Achilles, they say, "Who kicked me?" Because it felt like somebody kicked. And he bent down and grabbed his ankle. When he realized what it was, the first thing he shouted out, he was like, "Oh, Ish, I ain't got no insurance." I tried not to laugh, but it was funny to have a devastating injury. But that was the first thing that he thought of. So, but that's the thing. When you're an entrepreneur, all that stuff is on you. Ain't nobody providing it. Ain't nobody matching it. You matching you. You matching your own contributions. So that's a big hurdle to have, man. So I just wanted to chime in on that comment. But I do agree that I think college is generally overrated, okay? I think college is good, but, I was looking at a list. They actually got a list of college degrees that have the most difficult time paying their student loans back. And so when I saw that list with those degrees, I like printed it out and stuck it on my son's wall. And I was like, look, I think we can do this without no loan. But these are some of the things that you need to. This is a stat that I got off the Money Guy show, and you're going to appreciate this because you're an educator. 75% of people who graduated college do not work in the field that their degrees in. But of people who are millionaires, 75% of millionaires work within the field that they got their degree in. What does that say, hearing that stat to you as the educator?
That says to me, you need to be very, very strategic with how you plan for college, and you need to go into a field that you plan on staying in, and you need to do your research before you choose any degree program, because that tells you right there, hey,
right,
if you stick with what you got your degree in, then you could become a millionaire.
Right, yeah. When I heard that stat, I was like, man, 75% of people aren't working in what they got the degree in, but 75% of millionaires are. To your point exactly, college is dope, but you have to take some thought into what you're going to do, what path that you want to take. I remember I was a computer science major, and after I got those few grades back from trying to learn C++, I was like, I can't do this. So I looked at my homeboy who plays sports. I was like, what are you majoring in? He was like, criminal justice. I was like, I'm about to do that. and so, because I knew I could master GPA. When it comes to stuff like that, memory-based, I got almost a photographic memory. If I see it and write it down, I'll lock it in and memorize it verbatim. But the professors were honest. They was like, okay, if you're switching to this major, you're going to either need to go get a master's or go get a law degree if you want to make this degree be financially worth the amount of loans that you're going to take out. So I think that that's definitely a big point, man. Yo, hey, man, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. It was a dope show, man. I kind of like, we may have to come back, man, and just do a session where we just go through topics, man. Because I kind of like throwing them topics at you, but I threw that education one out there. You looked at me like, but yo, I definitely appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate everybody who tuned into the chat. Thanks for tuning in. Yo, before you get out of here, go ahead, drop all your information where everybody can find you at, and I'll make sure I put everything in the description box and also pin it to the first comment of this video.
Absolutely. So yeah, Journey to a Million on YouTube, at Journey to a Million 1. Wealth Building Educator on Instagram. LinkedIn would be Rashad Muhammad. And I also want to throw out there, if anybody's in Texas, if you're an educator in Texas, I'm running for the Texas Teacher Retirement System Board of Trustees. Man, we really got to work on this pension plan for our educators here in Texas. We need to make things better for them. And I definitely am the person that will help to get educators the benefits that they deserve. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. My email address is rashad98@gmail.com, rashad98@gmail.com. I'm always down to answer questions and having these collaborative conversations.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody, make sure you do your due diligence. Make sure everybody who's supporting your interest. Here's a quick story for a video I got coming out, but this will show you how important to make sure you got the right people who are managing these types of plans. In Maryland, the 529 Maryland College Savings Plan is actually frozen. I'm going to do a video about it, but it's frozen. People do not have access to their accounts. So it's a lady who was on the news who has a son who is in his last semester of college. She has $40,000 in her account and cannot get to it. Why is it frozen, you ask? Because of an interest accounting error. So what did the Maryland 529 represent? We're going to start an emergency fund where you fill out this information. We'll do a priority list and we'll put $1 million in this fund. Well, people who don't have access, we can give them the money now and they can get their money out and pay it back, no interest free. Well, they got these forms filled out. Everybody filled out these forms thinking they was going to get priority. When these people called the Maryland 529 program to ask, hey, where's the status on the priority? No response, no call. Nobody got nothing yet. So now you got kids in college. The deadline to pay for these semesters is fastly approaching and people can't pay for it. So the people you put in charge of these type of retirement programs and these things have very value. So, hey, do your due diligence. Hey, check out his content. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Y'all take care. Be blessed. Peace.
Appreciate you for having me, brother.
No problem.